On paper, being born a Bhaalspawn sounds like a fast track to greatness in Faerûn. Divine blood, unique powers, and a place in the history books. In reality, it's a waking nightmare from the first breath to the last. These children of Bhaal, the dead god of murder, are pawns in a cosmic scheme they never volunteered for. Every step of their lives is shadowed by violence, paranoia, and the looming promise of betrayal. The brutality baked into their upbringing and the sanctioned atrocities they are pushed towards sow deep mistrust among their own kind, setting the stage for a lifetime where alliances are brittle and betrayal is a constant threat. Let's dig into exactly why being a Bhaalspawn is far more curse than blessing. The bloodline you can't escape. This cursed inheritance doesn't just bind a single individual, it ripples through their entire family and anyone tied to their bloodline. Even distant relatives of known Bhaalspawn may become targets of divine enemies or tools for cultists, dragged into a cycle of intimidation, coercion, and bloodshed. Family members often suffer from social ostracism, political pressure, and the constant threat of abduction or assassination as leverage. For a Bhaalspawn, the weight of this legacy means not only guarding their own life, but watching their kin live under a permanent cloud of fear and suspicion. Bhaalspawn inherit more than their father's supernatural essence. They inherit his enemies, his ambitions, and his infamous legacy. This legacy, rooted in Bhaal's foresight during the time of troubles, ensured that his children would be drawn into his schemes, regardless of their personal desires. Every faction with a stake in Faerûn's divine politics has an opinion about them, and most of those opinions involve eliminating them outright. Priests of opposing gods see them as existential threats to their faiths. Assassins see them as lucrative contracts, and other Bhaalspawn see them as direct rivals in a deadly race for survival and supremacy. Some neutral factions and mercenary companies even view them as destabilizing forces, believing that their presence can draw divine conflict into otherwise stable regions. There's no opting out. Neutrality simply paints you as an easy target for every ambitious hunter in the realms. The horrific practices of their kind. Survival often forces Bhaalspawn into brutal, God-sanctioned practices, a cycle rooted in Bhaal's own dogma. Ritual killings, intended to strengthen the fragment of Bhaal's essence within them, are common among those who embrace their murderous heritage. Many organize purges against their kin, believing that absorbing a rival's divine spark increases their own power. These killings are rarely clean. They're often conducted publicly, wrapped in symbolism, and designed to spread terror through enemy ranks. Cults devoted to the Lord of Murder act as enforcers, intelligence networks, and executioners, ensuring these acts are carried out with ruthless precision. This constant interplay of sanctioned murder and divine ambition turns the Bhaalspawn's existence into a deadly game, where every calculated move risks a swift and bloody retaliation. Bhaal's faithful often engage in elaborate rites to sanctify these killings, including inscribing his symbol in the blood of the victim or offering the heart upon an altar. For Bhaalspawn, these rites are not mere religious formalities. They are a dangerous means of binding themselves tighter to the god's will, reinforcing both their divine essence and their dependence on murder as a path to power. Participation in such practices further isolates them from potential allies, cementing their place in the god's grim hierarchy. The constant paranoia. Trust is a luxury a Bhaalspawn can't afford. Their allies may secretly be spies for rival factions, their closest confidants potential assassins in disguise. Strongholds and fortresses offer only the illusion of safety. Assassins slip through cracks, traitors open gates, and political operatives lure them into traps. Even celebrations or truces can mask deadly ambushes. Living under this cloud of suspicion means every relationship is a gamble, and one wrong guess can end in a blade between the ribs. Even within cult cells loyal to Bhaal, betrayal is common, as advancement often comes through eliminating one's superior. Nowhere is this more clear than in the pattern of succession in certain Bhaalite temples, where the death of the reigning high priest at the hands of an ambitious subordinate is not only considered unacceptable, but expected as a path to promotion. In some cases, such as the bloody handover in the Bhaalite Shrine of Westgate, paranoia and preemptive action by the incumbent high priest actually prevented their own assassination, allowing them to remain in power for decades. For a Bhaalspawn, such accounts are not abstract lessons, but a reflection of their everyday reality, reinforcing the need to see every handshake as a potential dagger in disguise. The goal you never asked for. The entire existence of a Bhaalspawn is tied to Bhaal's resurrection. Whether they crave power or long for peace, the divine plan forces them into the cycle of death and ascension. The god's essence demands bloodshed, manipulating events so that conflict is inevitable. Those who resist find themselves hounded by cultists or drawn into wars they never sought, pushed into situations where killing becomes unavoidable. Bhaal's faithful actively work to provoke such conflicts, using assassinations, sabotage, and misinformation to herd his progeny toward violent confrontation. Even the most noble Bhaalspawn can be warped into feeding the very prophecy they despise, finding themselves complicit in the god's return, despite every effort to resist. A chilling example comes from the events surrounding the Year of the Gauntlet, 1369 DR, when coordinated actions by Bhaalite cults in the Western Heartlands sparked a multi-faction conflict between mercenary companies, local militias, and rival faiths. The chaos was engineered to draw known Bhaalspawn into the fighting, ensuring they would spill blood and thus strengthen the god's lingering essence. This manipulation showed how divine forces could ignite regional unrest purely to serve Bhaal's resurrection, trapping his progeny in a no-win scenario. The physical and mental toll. Living with Bhaal's essence inside you takes a heavy toll, and the cost is both physical and mental. Many Bhaalspawn experience sudden surges of violent rage, disturbing dreams that leave them sleepless, and a creeping erosion of sanity. These visions often take the form of Bhaal himself, urging or commanding acts of murder, making the internal struggle a constant battle of wills. Their abilities often manifest unpredictably, one moment an asset, the next a danger to friend and foe alike. And these powers may flare in moments of emotional stress, causing unintended harm. Controlling these powers requires relentless discipline, ritual warding, or magical intervention, and slipping even once can lead to irreversible consequences that alienate allies and embolden enemies. For some, the only way to quiet the god's whisper in their mind is to spill blood, an act which deepens the spiral toward becoming a vessel of pure murder and locks them ever tighter into the role Bhaal intended for them. These visions would culminate in disaster during a Bhaalite-led uprising in the Dragon Coast region. The instigating Bhaalspawn was reportedly plagued for months by increasingly violent dreams in which Bhaal demanded the slaughter of specific local leaders. Succumbing to these visions, they orchestrated a wave of assassinations that destabilized the entire area, sparking a chain reaction of gang wars and political collapses that illustrates how the god's whisper, left unchecked, can escalate into a regional crisis that fulfills Bhaal's will at the cost of countless lives. The inescapable end. Bhaalspawn rarely die of old age. Most meet violent ends, slain by a rival assassinated by political enemies, or consumed by Bhaal's essence when the god inevitably reclaims it. He seeks to gather these scattered fragments of himself, not merely to regain his former strength, but to fully restore his divine kingdom over murder and return to his seat among the Faerûnian Pantheon. Reclaiming this essence allows him to consolidate power lost during the time of troubles and reassert his influence over both mortal and divine realms. This makes every surviving Bhaalspawn a living piece of the god's unfinished resurrection, a resource he will stop at nothing to reclaim. In the waning years of the 14th century DR, the deaths of several prominent Bhaalspawn in rapid succession were accompanied by a marked surge in Bhaalite cult activity and visions among his clergy, interpreted as the god actively reclaiming essence to accelerate his return. The few who survive often do so by embracing the very cruelty they once fought against, ruling through fear and leaving behind a legacy as monstrous as their fathers. A prime example of this is Abazigal, a Bhaalspawn whose reign as a half-dragon warlord, whose iron-fisted control over his domain, suppression of dissent, and ruthless campaigns against neighboring powers embodied the merciless ambition of his divine heritage. His dominion was marked by militaristic expansion, calculated intimidation, and the elimination of any who might threaten his supremacy, cementing a rule feared across the region. The path for a Bhaalspawn is paved with corpses, and at the end lies either destruction or a throne built on blood. Being a Bhaalspawn isn't just dangerous, it's a lifetime sentence to a role you never chose, under a god who sees you as nothing more than a piece on his board. Every choice is tainted by prophecy, every alliance shadowed by suspicion, and every victory one step closer to becoming the thing you hate. The power may be real, but so is the cost, and that's why it truly, spectacularly sucks to be born a Bhaalspawn.